Today, we will learn about absolute value, what it is, and how we could use it in everyday life. Does anyone know what absolute value means? It's okay if you don't. We're going to learn about it now. So, as you already know, we have numbers on both sides of zero. We have negative numbers and positive numbers. Many of you have seen a number line, and we can visualize absolute value using that tool. We also know that you can find the distance between two numbers by subtracting them. Additionally, you know that you can use expressions and equations, and both sides of equations need to be balanced because of the equal sign. We will use all of these tools, the number line, distance, and equations, to understand the concept of absolute value. The first visual representation we can use is the number line. As you can see, the two lines that I'm highlighting now around a number is the absolute value symbol. When you see those lines around a number, it means that you need to find the absolute value of what the number inside of those lines is. To do this, we just simply count how many jumps we have to take from 0 to get to our number. So 3 is here on our number line. So we take 1, 2, 3 jumps. So our absolute value of 3 is 3. Negative 3 is over here on our number line. To get from 0 to negative 3, we take 1, 2, 3 jumps. So you can see that 3 and negative 3 have the same absolute value, 3. Here you can see I have a graph. We want to know the absolute value of A and B, as you can see written in the purple at the bottom. To do this, we're going to count the number of jumps it takes to get to points A and B from the origin, point 0, 0. First, we'll start with A. So it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps to get to A. To get to point B, it takes 1, 2, 3 jumps. Remember when you're graphing that where point A is would actually be negative 5 on the x-axis, and where point B is would be positive 3 on the y-axis. Here, I'll show you. And negative 5 winds up at A. Same for point B. B is at point 3 on the y-axis. You just saw two examples of how to understand the concept of absolute value, the first using a number line and the second using a graph. The main idea of absolute value that I want you to remember is that the absolute value of A is always the distance from 0. That's the most important part of this concept. Now that you understand what the concept of absolute value is, I want to go over some mistakes that some people might make when they first learn this concept that I don't want you to make. The first one is finding the absolute value of a negative number. We need to remember that the absolute value of a number can never be negative. So even though I'm about to count backwards, 1, 2 jumps on the number line, our absolute value is still a positive 2, not negative 2. Not to make when working with absolute value numbers is when you're adding two numbers that have the absolute value symbols around them, you need to evaluate the absolute values before you add them. So the absolute value of 5 is 5, plus we need to find out the absolute value of negative 3. We remember the absolute value of negative 3 is a positive 3. So now we can add 5 plus 3 equals 8. What we don't want you to do is accidentally subtract when you see the negative symbol inside the absolute value for the 3. Now let's talk about when you will use this concept of absolute value. In addition to just at school using word problems, you will also need to use this concept in real life. For example, every day I wake up at my house. After I'm ready, I drive all the way to school. It's about 5 miles. At the end of the day, I drive from school all the way back to my house. So my car has started and stopped at the same point. It started at my house and it ended at my house. But did I drive 0 miles or did I drive 10 miles? We know I drove 10 miles because I first drove 5 miles to school plus another 5 miles back home. I can express this situation using absolute value by first writing that I drove to school, the absolute value of 5 miles, and I also drove back home. But since it was backwards, I'll write the absolute value of -5. Again, we're using our order of operations and evaluating the absolute value signs before adding and noting 5 plus the absolute value of -5, which is also 5, equals 10. Now it is time to practice this new concept you have learned. I want you to try to evaluate this expression. If you think the answer is positive 15, you're right. Next, I want you to evaluate these two expressions. If you think the answers are positive 7 and positive 13, you're right. Good job today, everyone. Remember, these concepts and questions might come up on your next quiz or test, so if you have any questions or are unsure about this, please ask me. Thanks for listening.